With this channel, we've tried to stay focused on solely covering new or obscure information. It's very rare we cover such an old topic like this, but it really feels like it deserves to be reopened. There are so many questions left unanswered, so much speculation that died down with the release of the animation. To this day, we still have no idea who made the short or why it was so shrouded in mystery. Today, on Animation Warehouse, we will be covering the search for the Crackmaster. To understand why people were so dedicated to finding this thing in the first place, you really have to establish some context. The short first aired in December of 1975, a time where television wasn't very well documented. Then, the short only aired 11 times over the course of 3.5 years before disappearing forever. Now, that alone is pretty strange itself. But it doesn't stop there. This short that only airs a couple of times before completely disappearing also happens to be extremely memorable. You read comments about it before it was found, and people are recalling the narrator's soft singing, the camel ride, and the monster. Combining all of these elements, you get a short that really engraved itself into children's minds. It's unsurprising it was so sought after and gave people nightmares. I'm sure a lot of people weren't even sure if it was real.
Spending really the entire 1980s and most of the 1990s wondering if it was even something that existed or if I dreamed it, because nobody that I ever talked to remembered it.
Cut to over 30 years later with the invention of the internet. You get these people who distinctly remember the short, talking with others who remembered and were curious about it. Suddenly, it's no longer this thing you came up with in your head, but something other people can actually testify to.
So many of us remembered so many different little details that by themselves don't really mean much, but if you put them all together, we remembered.
Cracks remained an urban legend for years, with rumors about the short being banned or destroyed due to its frightening nature or causing mental distress. There was little information about Cracks itself, and many of the discussions were just users speculating about how the short played out. Around the same time that many of these discussions took place, one particular search began. On September 20th, 2008, Jennifer Bourne, who is better known by her online alias Namowal, made a post on her blog post describing how she remembered Cracks and how nobody could find it. John Armond, a radio host and musician, came across this post and left a comment detailing why he was so dedicated to finding it. I am 37. This clip would have aired between 1976 through 1978, and I was terrified of it and mesmerized by it all at once. John was looking for closure and wanted to help bring publicity to his efforts. The two began having back and forth discussions and came up with various methods as to how they could locate it. Maybe we should start a movement, the Crack Monster Liberation Front or something. They suspected that there was some sort of cover-up relating to the Children's Television Workshop, or CTW. Thus, they felt that the only way to get the short released was to publicize the short and add pressure. It's archived somewhere, but I'm certain that the person in charge of it has no idea that so many of us are looking for it. I've thought about online petitions, but who do you send it to? None of us actually know who has the thing. I also thought of filing suit against Sesame Street, CTW, and public television for 30 years of nightmares and trauma. I won't seek any money, only a copy of the Crack Monster. Who's with me? Other ideas considered were producing a cartoon parodying Crack's elusiveness, or contacting the artist, narrator, or heir of the staff who would work on the short. No matter the method, John was dedicated. John contacted an employee at the CTW archives and was able to learn some key information. The clip was aired on Thursday, February 10th, 1977, during the first 15 minutes of episode 979. It was listed on the storyboard as, "A girl lying in bed imagines she sees a crack on the wall. Divergent thinking." Sure, it's not a lot of information, but it was still much more than he had before. Things were beginning to slow down when a miracle happened. The party that owned the rights to the short contacted John Armond after learning of his efforts.
The way that I got the clip was kind of unconventional because, as a lot of us have discussed, we doubt that Sesame Street kept very good records of this early kids show. We don't think that people had the opportunity to have VCRs at the time or to have it taped, and that anyone would have a copy of something they taped on a VCR back in the 1970s, and that has ended up so far to be true. We thought that the best bet may be to get it from either the artist or an heir of the artist, some kind of, maybe a kid or grandkid or whoever did it, whoever maybe narrated it, somebody that was in the know back then or somebody that was in the loop, and that proved to be the best way, indeed, to get this clip.
So, that's the end of the story, right? Unfortunately, no. While they did give him the tape, there was a condition. He had to sign a paperwork stating that he was not to copy or publish the clip anywhere. No exceptions. The party were very private and wanted to keep the short under wraps. After he signed the fax paperwork, the video was sent through his mailbox. All we know about the source's identity was that there was some sort of heir to a staff member.
One of the ways that I was able to get the clip, and one of the hoops that I had to jump through, was to promise and sign and swear, essentially, that I would never post the clip online. But again, I had to essentially promise and be, liable and in big trouble if it ever ended up by my hand on the internet.
The audio of John Armond you're hearing is from his 9-minute audio documentary, originally recorded back in 2009. Although he couldn't use actual clips from cracks, he clarified some of the misinformation and recreated a transcript, though he had claimed to have found it. Fellow searchers were skeptical. He also said that he was forbidden to post it. No video, no pictures, no sound. The story of how he got it was strange too. Fellow searchers got suspicious. Sure, he said he had it, but did he really have it? Months after John had found it, Jennifer met up with him when he was in town. He was visiting family in Los Angeles and brought cracks with him. They met up at 7:30 a.m. on a Sunday morning at the Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf. Though she wasn't 100% sure she wasn't being tricked, once they reached the DVD's menu screen, she was convinced. I put the DVD in my laptop, a plain menu popped up, a lone thumbnail image showed something I hadn't seen in over 3 decades. "It's him," I said like a crazy kid. "It's really him." She wrote about the short herself on her blog, detailing her whole experience. It's well worth a read. Although the short was found, some questions still remained. Despite being in contact with the rights holder, neither John or Jennifer knew anything about its production. None of the voice actors, animators, studio, nothing. Jennifer commented that the animation didn't look of studio quality. Since they were legally unable to publish it, Jennifer drew some references to show other searchers how the characters looked. For a while, things went quiet.
The first time I would have heard about the Crackmaster was on the Snopes forums. Looking at my phone now, that was a thread from 2008, so that's the earliest I would have heard about the short. I think it was probably more like 2009 though.
In mid-2012, Daniel Wilson, a young Australian man, began growing interest in the Crackmaster.
I did care, I did really want to see it, and I was, quite interested, but it didn't, the passion didn't really take over until sort of the Lost Media Wiki had been established, and this had been established as a piece of Lost Media, and it all just suddenly clicked, and I went, I really want this thing now.
Being familiar with the previous successful attempts, he contacted both Jennifer and John in hopes for leads.
You know most of the story about John Armond by now. I contacted him and he basically told me, look, I can't help you unless you come to America. So I legitimately was looking into flights to America from Australia, and that's like $3,000 or something crazy like that. So it was just out of the question.
Of course, with John Armond's contractual obligations, he was unfortunately unable to provide much help to Daniel's efforts and went quiet afterwards.
And yeah, around that time, I sort of just went, all right, fine. Like, if you're not gonna put it online, and I understand why he didn't. By the way, I'm not like having a go. Obviously, he was contractually obligated to not put it online, so for his own safety, he did not do that. Fair enough. But I thought, all right, well, if you're not gonna do it, then I will. I'll find a copy of it.
Jennifer, however, did answer any questions Daniel had in a thread on Muppet Central. One rumor that was heavily prevalent in discussions about cracks was about the animator. As stated before, not even John Armond knew who had produced the animation, though it was commonly attributed to Cosmo Anziolati. Cosmo is well known with his wide filmography, working on television shows such as The Smurfs and Scooby-Doo.
I think the next step for me was actually reaching out to Cosmo Anziolotti, who had been rumored as having created the short, I wrote him a letter and he responded. Of course, it was disappointing to find out that he did not have anything to do with the Crackmaster cartoon.
It's unknown where exactly Cosmo's alleged involvement came from. Jennifer speculated its origins came from an unverified claim on Ralph Bakshi's Wikipedia page and was later removed.
By that time, I'd sort of contacted every lead I had at the time, but then the transcript from one of the Sesame Street episodes that Crackmaster had aired on surfaced, or at least I found it. It must have passed me by until then, but anyway, I found this thing online, and it proves that it was aired. And it was sourced from CTW Archives, which is held in some university that I can't recall right now. But anyway, I contacted the CTW Archives asking if they, stored any video footage, and sadly they didn't. They did have a good, thorough look for me, but no, there was no chance.
Discouraged, Daniel began realizing that his approach was proving unsuccessful and started investigating claims that it had aired on the Spanish dub of Sesame Street.
So yeah, by that point, I'd sort of gone, alright, well, this approach isn't working. This going the official way isn't working, so what do I do? And it was around this time that people on the Lost Media Wiki, Latin American users, started getting in touch with me and saying, hey, I remember seeing this as a kid on PLAZA SESAMO, which is the Spanish adaptation of Sesame Street. So I really started focusing on that area because, frankly, I didn't care if it was a Spanish copy of the short. I just wanted a copy of the thing. I emailed a bunch of Spanish TV networks that had aired PLAZA SESAMO, sorry. And sadly, like a lot of them did actually get back to me. They were good enough to get back to me, but none of them were able to really help me out at all.
One user of the Lost Media Wiki went as far as to visit the TV stations in person, with little to no success.
There was one guy in the Lost Media Wiki, though, called That Mexican Guy. I'll never forget. He actually went around to these TV stations in person to see if he could, get more information. So massive props to him for doing that. Sadly, nothing ever came of it, and the Spanish copy of Crackmaster is still lost out there somewhere.
Similar to John Armond's approach, Daniel began attempting to bring attention to the short, and hopefully show Sesame Workshop that there was interest.
So yeah, I kind of by this point was running out of options. I'd gone around to forums, Sesame Street forums. I posted about it on IMDb's, Sesame Street's IMDb page. And then I thought, alright, look, well, I'll just make a petition for it. Because if I can at least show that there is some interest in this thing, then maybe Sesame Workshop will change their mind. One other idea that I did have while I was waiting, well, not while I was waiting, while I was searching for the Crackmaster was, I was gonna have little stickers printed up with Namowal's rendition of the Crackmaster on it, saying like, have you seen me? And then like the lostmediawiki.com, oh, actually it would have been the Wiki one back then. And they're just sticking them up all over the place. So I got to the point where I was so desperate that I was coming up with all these crazy ideas of how I could spread the word. So I did. I started the petition, and it wasn't, massively successful. But after a few months, we were in the hundreds of signatures, which was pretty good, I thought. But then things just died down again, as they do. Months passed, nothing. No new leads, no nothing. I'd pretty much come to terms with the fact that, I wasn't going to see it, at least anytime soon. And then Christmas Eve 2013, I checked my emails, and there it is. Sent from some temporary email address, Mailinator or Temp Email or one of those, disposable email services. And the title was Crackmaster, and the video was Crack-Stop-Mov, and that was it. There was nothing. There was no text, there was no information, just this one attachment and this email subject. And I'm thinking that this is bullshit. Like, before I click it, I'm thinking, no way. There's no way it's this easy. Someone's just going to email it to me. But sure enough, I opened it up and it was the real deal, and I royally lost my shit. It's funny. I wish I had copies of the Shoutbox logs from back then, because I was just going nuts in the Shoutbox. I was absolutely beside myself. The biggest mystery of all is why were they so secretive about it? Like, I don't know.
There's so much information we still don't know about Cracks. No artists, no names, nothing. Daniel suggested that there might have been a simple answer, like the term cracks being associated with crack cocaine.
It's probably a simple answer, like the term crack became synonymous with, crack cocaine, and they just wanted to get that image away. I don't know.
This would be possible if it weren't for John Armond stating that the source was uncomfortable with the short even existing.
They didn't seem too intent on keeping it, and they didn't seem too intent on even remembering that it was made in the first place.
Other pieces of lost media were found from finding and contacting names associated with their trademarks. With Cracks, and even Sesame Street in general, many segments tended to be titled differently depending on their source and release. Crack's official name wasn't even known before it was released, and even then, no records in the trademark electronic search system shows any signs of the animation. In a written exchange Daniel had with the head of Sesame Workshop's PR department, they simply told him that they would not be able to release the segment at all, and stopped replying. Why is there so little information about the segment? While John's copy was apparently sourced from a rights holder, the clip was recorded from an airing, according to Jennifer. Daniel's was from some sort of database with production codes intact.
But yeah, Jennifer confirmed. She said, yep, this is the one. That's the one that I saw. It's different from John Armond's copy because John Armond's copy begins with a clip of Bert and Ernie, so it was clearly sourced from a Sesame Street episode, whereas my copy begins with some sort of title card, seemingly sourced from some sort of database, some sort of archive.
Were they even really a legal source at all? If they were, why didn't they just take down copies of the short and publicize? All these questions are really the core of what inspired the creation of this video. There was an initial boost of popularity after it was uploaded, but Cracks still never got any answers. Hopefully some kind of interest is sparked by this. There's still so little we know about Cracks. And if this video interested you, or even informed you about the search, it's done its job.